Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Decaturish.com Twitch show. This is Dan Wisenhunt, editor and publisher of Decaturish.com. We have a great panel for you today. Our guests are journalist and WABE host Rose Scott. Rose, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Dan?
Can't complain. Thank you so much for joining us. We have AJC columnist Bill Torpy. Bill, how are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And as always, we have Hans Utz, Decatur's columnist. Hans, how are you?
I'm super honored to be on with these folks. This is really exciting.
Yeah, so am I. It's going to be a great show. Just wanted to let y'all know that we tape the Twitch show every Wednesday and Friday at 6 p.m. If you would like to participate in our discussion tonight, please go ahead and sign up for a Twitch account. And if you are going to the trouble to do that, please go ahead and give us a follow. If you've got a Twitch account, you can post your comments and questions in the comments section. We'll take a look at them and give them a read. I wanted to just start tonight's episode by reminding everyone to please be aware that COVID 19 is still out there. It's still happening. This has not gone away. And I say that because I went from knowing zero people in my immediate family who have had COVID exposure as of yesterday to knowing several people as of today who have had COVID exposure. It's just a sobering reminder that, you know, wear your masks, use your hand sanitizer, wash your hands, go get tested. The DeKalb County Board of Health is a sponsor of Decaturish. There is free testing. If you Google DeKalb County Board of Health, you can sign up to do the testing there. It's free, it's quick, you'll get your results in a day. So just a reminder, please, everyone, take this seriously. So with that little sermon out of the way, I wanted to talk to Rose and Bill specifically. Thank you for masking up, Bill. I don't think you need to do this for this specific interview, but the mask is looks nice anyway. Um, I wanted to talk about the art of the interview, and the reason that I asked Rose and Bill to come on is that they both are really talented at conducting an interview, and I wanted to ask each of you personally. What is the most challenging news interview that each of you have ever done, and why was it challenging? We'll start with Rose.
Oh, God. You want the individuals or you just want the situation? And first of all, thank you, Dan, for allowing me to be a part of this. I'm really honored. Thank
I'm more. The pleasure is mine. Believe me. I would say people.
you. Because Bill knows this person very well. Um, I've had two, and what I mean by challenging is because the individual, the interviewee, they became a little bit, not a little bit, they were getting disrespectful and just kind of curt and taking jabs. And, look, as journalists, we can, yeah, we deal with it. But it was extra jabby because they started to hit on my sex as a woman. And if you don't like a question, that's one thing, or if you think a question is unfair, but there are ways you can address that. But when you just start taking jabs, and I know Bill knows this, you know, look, we're human, but we're taught to deal with it. One was a politician, a former mayor. The other was a billionaire. Uh, so why does it matter? Well, I think in context it does matter. But I've always my approach, my philosophy is that I'm going to remain as much as I can respectful, because it says a lot about that individual, not me, when they react the way they react or they say the things that they say. And so for me, and it's tough. I've been doing this for a long time. I have thick skin, but sometimes you're in that studio and you really want to reach across the mic and smack them, but you can't do that because your organization probably don't have a lot of money to pay for the lawsuit, but that's okay. So challenging that way. I approach every interview as a conversation, and I'm trying to get information. Yes, I'm asking questions that I think the listeners want to ask. But Dan, sometimes people will come in, and sometimes people come in with an agenda. Oh, you're the media. They're gonna be defensive no matter what, and so I'm okay with that. But there is a way that you can handle that. And when you start taking shots and you start questioning Me as a woman, as a Black woman, just because you want to deflect from the questions that I'm asking. I mean, come on. That says a lot about you, not me. And I also have staff who are working with me. I have younger producers who are working with me. I have a lot of journalists, young journalists that come into the studio that shadow me. So my reaction and how I handle that is going to be felt. And so I'm aware of that. And so I just kind of grin and bear it, and I'm able to nudge a little bit, but I'm also representing my company, my organization. So, you know, now I understand Bill just punches people.
I like your poster behind you there, Rose. In fact, I was going to ask you something, Rose. I may be breaking from the forum here, but
That's okay.
you, I'm just kind of wondering the good and the bad of it being live. So you're there sitting there with the person, and there was no off the record. There's they know that they're on the radio, and I don't know if you also do video at the same time,
Mhm.
but that's a different. Usually I'm kind of sitting on someone's doorstep or whatever, with my notebook, so it's more relaxed. At the same time, I'm wondering if they either behave better with you because it's going live out over the radio, or if they're different, they're maybe more guarded because they know that. So I'm just kind of wondering what's the good and the bad of what you do versus me on someone's front porch.
I think for those seasoned guests, like sometimes politicians or folks who are used to having a camera in their face or a microphone in their face, they know the landscape. They know how to maneuver through that. And then they're and sometimes they come in with their very measured answers. As a journalist, absolutely not do I give questions ahead of time. I've never subscribed to that. I never will. I'll give you talking points, but you will never ever get questions ahead of time. And I have told people, look, if you don't want to answer a question, don't answer it. Say, wait, no, Rose, let me get back to you on it. Or often, here's a little trick. When you hear somebody say, that's a good question, Rose, it means they're thinking too. They're thinking to give you an answer. But sometimes when it's live, Bill, I think they're excited, and then for me, my approach is to try to make them feel as comfortable as possible. Not because I want to get them or have some gotcha journalism, because when they're relaxed and it's a conversation, we're talking. And I can still ask a difficult question. I can still have a difficult conversation. I learned a lot of that from Dennis O'Hare, who's I consider not only a colleague and a friend, but a mentor. Dennis has a way of I watched him for so many years, especially with politicians. And Dennis know they lying. Dennis knows they lying to his face, and Dennis can still get in there and say, well, let's go back to 1946. And they're like, so I have learned from a lot of different people, and from that, I've developed my own style. Now, it works for me. I'm not aggressive. I don't think I'm an aggressive journalist. I ask questions. If someone feeds me some BS, I might say, come on now, really? Nah. But that's natural for me. If I was talking to my uncle or a friend of mine and they're, feeding me a line, I'm like, nah, come on, really? You know, um, that's just kind of my approach. So whether it's live or pre-recorded, and I mess up more in a pre-recorded than anybody else. I think my producer is is watching Grace, and she'll tell you, Rose is always saying, "Oh, do that again, mark that." It's different though. It's so weird. When it's live, I feel like I'm smooth. When it's pre-recorded, I'm stumbling and fumbling, and it's crazy, sneezing, all kinds of stuff.
Bill
So,
Torpy, what's the most challenging interview you've ever done, and why?
That's a hard thing because I've been doing this 38 years. I was trying to think of my hardest one while you were talking with Rose. I think it may have been a couple of times when there was a person. In fact, there was a district attorney who I was friendly with, and he was a pretty good source through the years, and then some stuff came up, and I had to write a story about him that was going to be not putting him in a good light. And I remember going there, and he was looking at me kind of like, I was somehow betraying him. And I'm like, no, I'm doing my job. I'm asking you questions. I've given you plenty of good press because, he was always a good quote and had a lot of different stuff, weird stuff happened in his county. But at the same time, I had to do my job, and there was some sexual harassments that were filed against him. Not the current one that you might be thinking of, but it was hard, and I remember afterwards. There was a big event happening in his county. I called him at his home, and he said, "I'll speak to anyone in the paper but you." And then
wow.
I turned around to the person next to me. I said, "Call this number." And the next day, his quotes were in the paper. Just it wasn't given to me. But I think that's one of the issues that we have is as far as and this really isn't about interviews. It's just part of the job is we build relationships with people, and there's some people you just cannot stand, but you need to be fair and get there and get what they say and try to do it, be fair to them. And there's other people that you just can't help but but then you can't overlook the stuff when they screw up or when they're, trying to be underhanded. That's one of the hard things of the job, and those are the tough interviews. If there's someone that's just a butthead and you got a tough story, it's just like I can't wait to call them.
Christmas.
But on the other hand, it's those ones that are tougher. So those are the tough interviews, and part of I think we're talking about styles. Mine is just kind of conversational. Often I don't even write questions. I mean, I might have like 2 or 3 words on the on a piece of paper. 1946, or that'll remind you to ask them about this or that. But I usually don't like to have questions unless it's going to really be a tough interview that I need to get. I generally don't ask questions. I'll just kind of wing it and we'll just talk.
I would say my toughest. I covered a mayor in Oxford, Alabama, and this guy, he had been rumored to be part of the Dixie Mafia. Had basically put people in holes in the ground, but he'd been the mayor of Oxford for 20 years, and I really went after him, but it was weird because we were both I think we both appreciated each other as adversaries. We didn't like each other, but we both respected each other in our different jobs. And he had heart surgery, and it was one of those things where he might not live through the heart surgery. And I had an investigative story I was doing about him, and I wanted to get him on the record in case he died, because then I wouldn't have my story. So I went and I had a whole list, and he's one of those people that is so crooked they're just shameless about it because they know where all the bodies are because they buried them, and they know what the laws say because they wrote some of the laws. And we sat there for about 30 minutes, and I went down, "Did you give contracts to your friends?" "Absolutely, I gave contracts to my friends. Who else would I give them to?" That sort of thing. And we concluded, and he said, "Dan, I'm not a bad boy."
Yes, I just break the law and kill people.
Yeah,
not a bad boy. I just do bad things.
Yeah. Hans, do you have any questions? You want to weigh in, or are you just in awe like I am?
My experience is much more on the other side of the questions, to be totally honest. And so I find the stories of adversarial conversations with the press really interesting, because I always had the perspective that you guys really when they say the fourth branch of government, that's meant that way. Like, you're the accountability organization.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not, if I'm in public office or if I'm in an important role serving the public good, you're not my friend. You're not my enemy. But your job is to ensure that the public actually knows the truth of whatever it is that I'm doing. And if I forget that and come and try to be, misdirective, like I'm not gonna necessarily guess which mayor you were talking about, Rose, but I probably have a few ideas. The that's just insane. That's an insane approach to take with the press, in my opinion. There's no way to win that. You're going to win those arguments every time, and the public sees it.
Well, and for me, I'm not even trying to win an argument. I'm asking questions. Now, have I watched an interview and I thought a question that was asked could have been couched differently? Sure, but everybody has their own style, and I try not to judge other journalists. I mean, I read Bill's stuff. I love his stuff. And there's some journalists I read and I'm like, but that's okay for them. But for me, my approach really is I'm asking questions that I think, what would someone in Brookhaven want to know? What would someone in East Atlanta or Southwest Atlanta want to know? That's my approach to it. And again, you can not like a question, that's fine. And I've had people after the interview, they go, how did I do?
Yeah, I love that.
I'll say, well, did you tell the truth? Yeah, then you're good.
I think they're more intimidated, obviously, being on the radio or on TV than, and sometimes I think you're able to get them to maybe say more than they want, because especially if you got to do the old dead air thing and people want to fill in the space. So that's one thing. I know I've been like that when I've done radio. It always sound like a dumb guy too. It's just like you always sound more like yourself. I'm like, God, I don't sound like that when I listen to it. I go, nah, you really do. It's just more so.
I've had people come in the studio right before we go on air and they go, what are you going to ask me? I'm like, well, do you know why you're here? You know why you're here. You should anticipate the question.
One thing that really kind of, as far as interviews, and it's kind of getting to be somewhat of a lost art, I think, because of PIOs and the whole idea that they need to smooth their message is that often. First thing, when you're dealing with police or politicians, often they send you to the PIO before you could talk to the desk sergeant or to whoever and get information firsthand. And now you're going through a third party. And also having, they often ask you to put questions in email form. Mm-hmm. And I see you shaking your head because that's just awful. And I,
sucks.
Actually, I'm waiting for some questions in email form from the mayor's office right now. That's why I was glancing at my phone. But because they rarely talk to me, and so that's about the only way I get anything from them.
And you're
a shame because you want to, you want to talk to people. I've been trying to get the police chief this week, and obviously he's got a few things going on, but. It doesn't, I can't imagine why they don't talk more because, 5-10 minutes with you, Rose, or, with me, then their voice is out there rather than some kind of pablum that is regurgitated through the third person PIO.
Do we have time to get to, I'm sorry, do we have time to get to some reader questions real quick, y'all?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so Trey Bliss asks, and Trey was on our show on Wednesday doing a financial analysis for us. He said, how has your approach changed as we have moved from print to digital? Do you have any thoughts on that? Has your approach to interviewing changed at all?
It's faster. I mean, I think, well, for me, I'm still, the same because I'm writing columns. So I have 2 or 3 a week, but I know that when we were doing things, breaking news, so you'd be doing a long story later on, but you go on to bang something out quickly online, do a 6-paragraph thing up, quickly. then you don't have time. You just, you ask someone for, a quick quote. I'll get back to you later on, maybe. And you throw it up there. And that's part of what's happened with, I mean, you would know it just because you're all digital and you like to get the full story, but I think you like to get stuff up quickly, right? And then you like to then come back with, the thumb sucker. But
It depends,
part of
but
it,
generally, yeah.
yeah, with digital is, there's no deadline. The deadline is always 2 minutes ago, and you often don't have the time to get in depth with someone, at least initially when you're breaking a story.
I will say, in terms of what I do, sometimes I'm the only person chasing that story,
Yeah.
and if I know that to be the case, I will take some more time with it. And it used to be when I was first starting it, I was really like, oh, I have to get this up now, 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 now. And once I became comfortable in the fact that, hey, there's nobody else who is going to devote the time to this except me, because of it's a very local story. I do try to take my time with it. I do try to get quotes. Now, I totally agree. If it's a breaking news situation, all bets are off. I try to get the story up as quickly as I can. But for example, I did the story about the Office for Civil Rights concluding their investigation into city schools of Decatur,
Mhm.
and I sat on that for most of a day because I had to read it and digest it and made sure I understood it myself first and ask questions about it before I disseminated it. But it was also a breaking news situation where I wanted this to get out there as quickly as possible. Um, Rose, what about you? Has your approach changed at all?
I think, even being in broadcast and, we're in this, obviously, we're in this space where everybody wants the information right now. And for me, and I've always said this to younger journalists, I don't always need to be first. I want to be right because people remember when you get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But we're in that space. And so what we try to do is even after we've done an interview, even after we've completed a show, there's a rush to even get it on the web. You know why? Because a lot of people may not listen to that what we call terrestrial radio, the way your father and mother listen to radio because they're listening to here on the phone. So there's a rush to get it up. We have a podcast now. So there's a rush to get that audio online into the podcast because people want to hear it. Obviously, we re-air the show again at 8, but yeah, no, our approach is whatever we put on air, we need to put online.
Do
That's
you
that's it.
have you guys found that there's uh, not more of an appetite, but maybe more of a tolerance of updating stories and evolving stories as facts come to light, where you maybe don't have to, you don't want to get it wrong, but there can be this is an unknown piece of information right now, and that can get updated later as more facts come out. I mean, I'm curious about that because the 24-hour news cycle really doesn't allow the nuance of
Sure.
emerging facts, right?
That's why, I mean, for instance, like Bill Rankin, who's our legal affairs writer, been there forever. And he's really good at doing that where Supreme Court say will come out with an opinion and, it's 62 pages or whatever. He'll kind of go through it real quick and, he kind of knows where to, look fairly quickly and get something. And then he'll do the 4 or 6 paragraph story to get it up there. And he'll do that quickly, 23 minutes later or whatever. And then you can kind of wade through it, make some calls, read through it, the nuance of the story, add stuff. And sometimes, in a breaking story that, you'll do it, 3-4 times in a day where you'll add information, quote, someone, so, the other side hasn't gotten back to us yet. I mean, it's changed dramatically. I mean, before, we would, at the AJC, we would have the journal, we'd have to bang something out in the morning for the afternoon paper. And then you could then dust that sucker off for the next day's morning edition. But, with this, with the internet now, you're basically trying to get things going at 11 o'clock, at 12:15, at 1:30, and that's the good and the bad of it. Things aren't as polished as they could be, but the information is out there, and you're able to be more nimble.
So we have another.
Yeah. One thing I just wanted to add, I remember, when the bridge collapsed, when the bridge caught a fire and collapsed, that was one story that we were just constantly, I know the AJC, you constantly updating. That's a huge story. And you're telling people check back for more details, check back for updates, because you want your listeners, you want your browsers to come back, and you want your listeners to know that they can go to wabe.org, or they can go to ajc.com to get that information. And so that's why you do that.
That was a weird one. I was kind of late, still at the office, and it was about 7 o'clock at night, something like that. And there weren't many people around, and I just saw Channel 2 had, we have TVs around the newsroom, and I was like, wow, look at that fire. And I went over there and I looked, and I'm like, holy smokes, it's big. So I called our David Wickert, our transportation guy. I was like, he was at home. He's got little kids, and he didn't know anything about it. And I go, turn on your TV. And he's like, holy smokes.
Literally.
So we literally. And so anyways, I started trying to feed something to, we were trying to get something up. I get a call from, or I called a fireman that I know, and he knew about it. And he said, go on Google Earth and look at the area there, and we looked at it and we saw all those fiber cable things, and he goes, that's what's on fire. And so it was like boom, 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 real time. I mean, 20 minutes after I saw that, the helicopter over that, I was talking to a firefighter who was telling me that what was there, and it was on Google Earth, and we were just churning and burning there.
Yeah. And it was 5 minutes from our station, so we could walk down there and kind of take pictures. So not that that's a luxury, but yeah, it was that.
It's always great when the news happens right on your street. I remember when there was a water main break on my street, and I was like, yes, I can step outside, take a picture. So we have another question from FM Fats. FM Fats asks, what would you like to see in place of the Lost Cause Monument by the old courthouse in the Decatur Square?
Hans, you're a Decatur resident.
Yeah.
I feel like I should say a monument to Pulitzer or something. Right? I don't know. Not another Lost Cause monument, I think, is probably the first most honest answer. I don't mind the community taking a little bit of time and thinking about it. Like, I'm not going to subscribe to the 24-hour news cycle, have to have an answer every 5 seconds for every witty answer or witty question that comes along. I don't know what should go there.
I like the view from the pavilion, where you could just kind of look at the unobstructed view of the courthouse. It's a beautiful old 100-year-old or 115 or whatever. So
that's a perfectly legitimate option, right? Like to take it back to some of the other questions that we were just talking about, one of my favorite answers to a question, speaking about honesty, was always, I don't know. If somebody asked me a question in an interview, what's the answer to this question? I got 11 departments, $2 billion of stuff that's happened. I don't know the details of that question. I have to go find out, and I'll come back to you. Like, that's an honest answer. And I think that's the same here, right? Like, I don't, what should go there? I don't, not what was there. That's my best answer. And let's take a little bit of time and figure it out.
2 words: Trader Joe's.
Oh God.
It's what Decatur. It's what really says everything about Decatur. It's the perfect
Yes,
monument.
It needs
It's the
a little
perfect monument.
pop-up
Little
Trader
pop-up
Joe's
Trader
kiosk
Joe's.
right there.
The $2. Rose, what about you?
A statue of Tupac. No, I'm just kidding.
I would be fine
I'd
with
be
that.
cool with that.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
I kind of agree with Hans there. I think, the community needs to come together and make that decision if they can, and I think that will be okay.
So our intern, Alex Brown, is just doing a great job for us this summer, and she's probably covered more protests in 2 months than I probably ever covered in 10 years, learning a whole lot. And she first says, this is an awesome lineup. Thank you, Alex. What advice do you have for the younger generation of journalists who may not have gone to a traditional journalism school?
Right. It's that's there's no substitute for it. Get out there and do it. I mean, I get people calling me all the time, who want to get into the business, and it's changed obviously dramatically, and it's harder to monetize. You may know that better than all of us right now. But I think there are so many outlets where you're able to write, like yourself, like your outlet. There's all sorts of places where people can ply their trade, and it ain't pretty often, especially at first, but you get better at it by doing it. And that's just don't be afraid to ask people, hey, can I offer them suggestions, and I'll write stuff for you. May not make much money, especially at first, but you get the experience.
I got two answers for that. The first is to unfilter your lens. We all have lived experiences, right? So my lived experience is much different than Bill's or Hans or yours, Dan. And so if you're going to be in this industry, I say unfilter your lens. And as you're writing, listen, listen, listen to what's around you, listen to what people are saying. You're going to do your research. Yeah, you're going to put in your open records request, whatever have you, but listen. And sometimes you got to take yourself out of the story, if that makes sense. And that's what I mean by unfilter your lens. There's a book called Your Blues Ain't Like Mine. So we all have lived experiences. So, do we all have biases? Probably, yeah. But you need to put that in check, especially when you are reporting on or want to report on communities or environments that you're unfamiliar with, or maybe you have a bias about because that's the way you were raised, or that's what Uncle Bob says every Thanksgiving. Unfilter your lens, write and listen.
That is really, really great advice. Hans, you want to weigh in?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I know Bill had mentioned this earlier, but allowing that space in the interview, I mean, truly taking Rose's advice and allowing the individual to sit with the quiet and then fill the quiet as the interviewer listens. Those were always the hardest interviews because you feel so much pressure to answer that question. Give your interviewee the opportunity to fill that space.
So Trey Bliss has another question for the panel. He asks, where do you get your news from, and what papers do you subscribe to?
Well, I don't read the AJC. It's a fish wrapper. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
He's right here, Rose.
I have a lot.
You do know that Lester Maddox's portrait at the Capitol of all the governors. He has the AJC right behind him with a fish on it.
Are you serious?
Yeah, in his portrait at the Capitol. Check it out next time you're there.
Oh my goodness! No, I listen to. There are three, four outlets that I routinely am just reading and listening to. I check the AJC every day. I've been since I moved to Atlanta in '96. I'm a little bit old fashioned. I used to love to get the paper and do this. I listen to NPR, obviously. I love the BBC. I listen to the BBC every morning. I try to read independent, local outlets like Decaturish. I love Decaturish because it takes me to beyond what the AJC and I'm not just saying this because Bill's on. I've had this conversation before. I think the AJC has done a great job in transitioning to digital. And the fact that they've borrowed our public radio motto, but they do a great job, I think, with covering different neighborhoods and communities. So I'm always reading. I love the BBC because it takes me outside of this continent. Obviously, I'll watch some of your traditional, cable networks, and I'll try to work my way through some that are really uncomfortable sometimes because it's like, what the hell are y'all talking about? That's okay. I want to know what all these different outlets are reporting and how they're reporting it. Um, and that's okay. Now, do we borrow story ideas from each other, Bill? Of course we do. That's what we
Yeah.
do in this business. But I also think that's a testament to the great work that we all do in this market. And I really want more of Decaturish to come online. I'm really happy and excited about Atlanta Canopy that's coming on soon. I think local journalism matters more now than ever. The last 4 years, local journalism has mattered more than ever. And even right now in the space that we're in, where everybody's having these uncomfortable conversations about race and racism, and everybody's checking their privilege or whatever. And we want to know how our local communities are doing that. So yeah, I'm local, and then I go a little national, then I get outside the continent.
Bill, what about you?
Well, I subscribe to of course, read the AJC. I listen to 90.1 when I'm in my car or my van. Washington Post, New York Times, Atlantic magazine. But I do kind of fart around and find different stuff. And interestingly, like on your Facebook feed, you'll see just story ideas and other public, people putting up publications that you're like, oh, I never heard of that, and then you go check out not only the story there, but what that publication is. So you're around, a lot of different things. I think that the as Rose was saying, one of the problems that has happened is that kind of traditional local entities have had a hard time. Obviously, the AJC, we've lost a lot of people. We've had a reboot and change things, but all terrestrial radio, TV stations, nobody has the amount of manpower that they used to have, and in fact, when I go through our files, sometimes I'll look at how we used to cover like zoning meetings, at this at the Atlanta City Hall. We'd have and we had the extras, DeKalb extra and the Fulton extra. You remember those things, and it was like all sorts of good. We had a Decaturish. We had 8 or 9 people in Decatur. In the Decatur thing. Now it's 2 or 3. So we have to kind of be more selective, and which means A, you're passing over things, but B, I think when you're being more selective, sometimes you're picking better stories rather than just throwing everything that you get up into the online or into the paper.
I am currently looking up Canopy Atlanta right now. I've never heard of this.
Atlanta, is it Atlanta Canopy?
It's canopyatlanta.org.
Canopy Atlanta, yeah.
So,
Canopy Atlanta.
yeah,
Max
it's
Blau,
Max
and he's got
Blau. My friend Marion Martin's on. Oh, wow. What
Pretty
a,
fantastic.
yeah, this is great. I'll have to check this out. So, but they're starting this fall.
yeah,
Okay.
and I think more of that is needed. I think concentrating on communities is okay. I think concentrating on regions is okay, because look, if WABE or the AJC doesn't cover it, there's nothing wrong. I'm a big proponent of outlets just focusing on one particular issue, because it's just that huge. Look at housing in the Atlanta area. Maybe I just have an idea.
Economic inequality in this town, right? I mean, this is my plug for local journalism, right? I think it's massively underappreciated how much impact local government has on everyone's lives. We get wrapped around the axle on national government, but 95% of your experience with government is your local government. And if nobody's watching that, like, the amount of damage that can be wrought is unparalleled, right? And so there's plenty of folks looking at stuff at a national level. It's Dan. I mean, the reason why I do what I do with Decaturish is because I believe in your mission. It's critical. It's more than just interesting. It's critical. It doesn't work without it.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I'm taking notes on Canopy Atlanta here. Excuse me. I'm like, Hmm. Interesting. Let me write this down. Um, I will say my news sources are kind of similar to y'all's. I read Washington Post. I'm a subscriber to that. I read a site called Talking Points Memo a lot. I don't know if everybody's familiar with that. It's a left-leaning site, but their model is very similar to ours in that it started out with like, it was built around this one writer's brand, which was Josh Marshall, which is kind of how Decaturish started. It was built around my particular brand, but then it grew into a business that included other voices and other writers. And they use a sort of a membership-driven model as well. Of course, I read the AJC. I mean, AJC is. I like to say if the AJC is doing good, we're all doing good because that's the sort of flagship for journalism. WABE and I have a content sharing agreement, which is great. So we trade stories sometimes. Locally, hmm. Reporter newspapers, I used to work for them up in Sandy Springs. There's some damn good papers. I mean, they've put out some really quality stuff, and their online presence has not been as aggressive as maybe as it should have been, and that's probably why you don't see a whole lot of them out there. I miss creative loafing as an
Yeah.
independent. That just
Mhm.
what's
I
happened.
used to love to go out to Marietta Street. They had a box in front
Yeah.
of our building,
Yeah.
and I used to love to go out there on Thursdays, I think it was, when they'd come. And I would love it, like, especially when you had John Sugg, who was there, curmudgeon, and he used to love to tear the AJC up. And I used to love, unless he was writing about me, of course. I used to just love it when he would tear into us because it was just, I mean, I like the give and take of the battle, and that was a good one. Was it Atlanta Curb the Atlanta was a good one. Unfortunately, they um, bit the dust.
Well,
And
they're technically on hiatus, but yeah.
Is that
and
okay?
those specialty publications too, Atlanta Voice and Project Q, and y'all remember Southern Voice. I mean, they were Southern Voice was so important. So I'm trying to keep it, make sure I know what's going on with those publications because they do cover specific demographics, and that's important.
I what has happened to creative loafing is such a travesty. It's just not the website just makes me sad. Like I go on their website and I'm like, because there's like great old content that you can't even find on it anymore because of the way they've archived stuff. It's pity. I really hope that I feel like Decatur has just tried to capture some of that for what we do, but we're not. Most of our readers are 40s, 50s, their
Yeah.
parents. They ain't hip.
You,
Okay.
you, you know, you guys don't have the stripper ads in the back of the.
Yeah. I will run one if it's tasteful, but it's I'm not gonna turn anything down, but
You better turn that down.
yeah. I
You need to
actually
do it. You need to do a best of. A best of. Do you? I mean, you have a best of Decatur, like
Yeah, we need to do so. All right, my idea for the best of was it inspired by Curbed. So Curbed did like the best neighborhood, and it was like click on this website and vote for your best neighborhood. I mean, is this clearly like you're trying to get people to click on your website? I know what you're doing. So I rented I registered the Great American Click Off. And so I registered gaclickoff.com. And so my contest, whenever I do it, is going to be called the Great American Click Off. And if you want to show how much you love this particular thing, you need to click on my website as hard as you can, as often as you can, repeatedly, and your dreams will come true. And that's that's what I'm going to do. I like the best of stuff. It's great marketing. I've always felt like I don't know. Maybe I'm at a point where I can be like Decaturish thinks this is the I every time I think of doing it, I'm like, who cares what I think? Like it's not That's why I pay other people to tell them what they think. Nobody cares what I think. What I think's good. I like freaking McDonald's burgers every once in a while. My taste is suspect. Um I wouldn't hang my hat on that.
Uh,
Huh?
Quick shout out. DoorDash is now delivering Popeye's chicken in Atlanta. So, hey, it's all over now.
I gotta do a Popeyes run about every 2 months. A
Yeah.
2-piece
Right.
spicy with beans and rice. And,
All right, I got to rant about Popeyes for just a second. So, I went to Popeyes on Father's Day, which was probably my first mistake because I think everybody had the same idea. And I went and I knew it was trouble because I got in the line and people were pulling out of the line and driving around, and I was like, yeah, I want to get a family pack. They're like, but that's going to take us 30 minutes. I'm like, okay, well, I'll park over here and wait 30 minutes. And they're like, but it's going to be 30 minutes. I'm like, let me just go to Publix. Like, you clearly are not interested in doing this today. It's nothing personal. But yeah, I'll go. So I went and got the Publix chicken, which is fine.
That is part of the charm of Popeyes.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like
sort of belligerent, non-caring, and apathy associated with getting your food.
Yeah.
The apathy and belligerence is Burger King's wheelhouse.
God, Burger King is
That's why y'all need to cook your own food.
We are cooking. I have a pork loin that is waiting on me right when the show is done. I'm going to go hit that up afterwards. But the Popeyes chicken sandwich is
A special thing.
It is wonderful. It puts Chick-fil-A's to shame. It is so good. So I want to talk about mental health for just a quick second because we're all dealing with some stress. And, some of us, George Cheedy and Dan, work through our stress and our emotions by working. We throw ourselves into our work and we just kind of push all that stuff to the side. What are each of you doing right now to take care of your mental health while all of this stuff is going on around us?
I hit the heavy bag 8-9 rounds this morning. It's a good mental release. You can just kind of blow off a lot of steam, keep in shape, and there's nothing as satisfying as just drilling, just hitting something very hard. So
does your heavy bag have a picture of a particular mayor on the front of it? I'm just curious.
No, I thought we agreed that I wouldn't say Rose is going to drink a shot every time I say a certain person's name. But that's good. And walking, I was walking my dog now that don't have like all that time that I have to drive somewhere. There's more time to do that.
Yeah, this is it's such a weird time, right? Because we have a pandemic. We have a pandemic going on, and we've got other issues. And what I will admit. This has been tough for me the last few months. I lost a sister and a brother. And then so you got all this going on with the pandemic, and then you got the protests. And let me tell you something. We, as I was saying earlier, we are human. We get tired. We get ticked off. When I come home, I have to disconnect sometimes. If I feel like, because we're around news all day. From the time I wake up to the time I walk back in the door. We're around news all day, so I have to disconnect sometimes. Now, unless there's some breaking news and I gotta just be aware. But you know what? I'll come home, depending on what mood I'm in, I'll put on Nina Simone, maybe Led Zeppelin, maybe Miles Davis, maybe Tupac, It just depends. Maybe some classical, it just depends. But I have to disconnect. And I'll tell you, I've gotten a little bit better. I think probably the last 6 months. And sometimes I'll turn on the Cartoon Network. You have to disconnect, at least for me.
It's the thing. It's always there now. Before, you would go home and you were home. Your story was written, your radio piece was done. But now, I'm checking my phone. I wake up in the morning and I look at my 2 email accounts, Slack, Facebook, Twitter, and it's just amazing the number of ways that you can get reeled into what you do. And I've tried to kind of, although now that we're here stuck at home, a lot of the time I'm not on the computer, I'm on this. And I think I got a note that said you had an average of 8 hours and 15 minutes a day last week. And that's, that's like a work day and basically it sort of is, except, screwing around with it too, and so your work and play and the space out time all just kind of melds into one morass of daily life at home.
Yeah. No, Bill's absolutely right. You have to disconnect. Now, if it's for some people working all the time and working through that, and look, I love news, but sometimes I don't want to watch news. I don't, you know,
Yeah.
and it's good for my sanity. I've been doing this for a long time. So, and I'm at that age where I'm thinking about that next chapter and so forth. And so, if I don't take care of my health, none of that matters. What I want to do in my next chapter. So I have to disconnect. It's good for me and it's good for the audience. It's good for my staff and my team, and I encourage them to do it as well. You know,
I wish if any of the people who are listening to us are ever inclined to post a comment on an article or a story, I wish that the memo could go out that it would go over better if you would email me first or shoot me a text. I can handle the criticism. That ain't the issue. The issue that I have is when people dunk on me for likes on Facebook. That that pisses me off. Just for the simple reason that, especially if it's people I know, and I'm like, you could just pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Dan, I don't like the way you handle this," but you're not going to get any likes on Facebook if you do that. And that is the part of social media I just cannot stand. It just turns people into terrible people sometimes.
well, look,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, look, it allows people to immediately send something right back.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes back to listening because someone can just hop in the car, turn on WABE, hear a snippet of an interview. And that's the great thing about Closer Look because we're long format conversations, but they hear a snippet. And I'm gonna text rules and I'm gonna put something on Twitter and I ain't even hear the whole conversation. And my thing is I love the feedback. I try to answer every email. Now, when you send me an email and you call me a racist or you call me a nigger, which it happens, or when you pick up your phone every day and call me a nigger and call the front desk, and I say that word because if someone says, "Oh, that word is so jarring to me," well, what do you think it means to me? Me saying using the N word, that doesn't soften the blow. It is what it is. That's what I get. I had a lady a couple years ago would call me nearly every day, tell me how much she hated the show and called me a nigger. But she did it every show.
Almighty.
I mean, you know? So I always tell people, look, before you hit send, before you hit post, just think about it. I'm not saying you can't have feedback and you can't express your displeasure with an interview. If you don't like the interview, Rose, I didn't like the interview. But when you say you nigger, I didn't like the interview, what's the purpose of that? That says a lot about you and not me. And I'm like, really?
I saw Gino Brogdon. I don't know if you guys know him. He's a former Fulton County judge, and he did a little video today, pulling the plug on Facebook. He just said he's an African American man. He said that he goes, the one thing I've found about Facebook is I've discovered stuff about a lot of people that I thought I knew and liked, and I think that that's the ugly underside of social media is the immediacy, and people think that, you're sending it out to the world, but here I am sitting in my basement, and I think it just does a lot of damage, and is it's just a lot of ugly noise.
Yeah, I don't know that I think it's the underside. I think it's the business model entire intent. Like, it's designed to generate conflict so that we engage, so that we generate content, so that we develop conflict, so that we engage. It's their fundamental business model. It's not the underside, it's the overside.
Right.
It's not a flaw, it's a feature.
It's baked into the cookie.
Yeah, I yeah.
It's like sports talk radio back in the day. It's like you call your sports talk station, you yell at the guy, you're frustrated or whatever. And now, with social media, we've taken that model of anger and frustration, you turn it on your local journalism, which is fine. But I'm just asking you to think about it. You can hate me and hate the show, but do you have to stoop to that level by calling me that ugly, vulgar name?
Yeah, I think Rose has got us all beat in the negative comments department, and
look, you get one or two a year, I'm good.
I'm very sorry you have to hear that, though. That's just ridiculous.
Hey, man.
I just get called douchebag.
Yeah. People make fun of my last name, but I'm like, I've been to middle school. I know how it is.
You see mine?
I realize it is not the ideal. There are a lot of things that rhyme with Wizenhunt, and it's unfortunate. But anywho, my other little beat about Facebook, if I could, is that the reason I have not, and there are so many times I've been tempted to just pull Decaturish off Facebook because I just have so many objections to the way they do things. The reason I do not is because there's no way to protect your intellectual property if you don't exist on Facebook. Somebody can go in, and this has happened to me, and impersonate my company, and there is not a damn thing I can do about it, which I think is crazy. I think it's absolutely insane. But you have to be on Facebook to protect your intellectual property. Now, I want to get off that for just a second. Trey had a question of, what do you think the big story is going to be in 10 years from now? Because I feel like we go through these every decade crises, where we had like 2001, then we had the financial crisis in '08, and now we're dealing with this. What do you think is the big story is going to be in 10 years?
Affordable housing on Mars, because apparently that's where we're all going, right?
We're certainly not solving it here.
Yeah. Technology is this incredible beast. But I also think that there's so many intersections at that. I'm curious to know where I brought up housing because I'm curious that is something that really, I'm wondering where people are going to be living in 10 years, man.
Or working. Or able to, now people are trying to kind of scratch together 2 or 3 jobs. I have 2 sons that are 23. One's just, he's graduated, he's looking for a job, and the other one's in school. But I'm just kind of interested to see how that will go for them. The idea that I have been here at AJC for 30 years next month.
Congratulations!
So, congratulations!
Yeah, it's now it's all all gravy from here, but that won't happen very much in the future, I don't think. People will be, working for themselves. They'll be working as part of something else. They'll be working 3 different side gigs, and that'll be their main thing. So I think the sense of technology and how we make our money will be a big, ongoing story the next decade.
Yeah, I think in 10 years, we're going to see the last of the pensions paying out and a transition of people to try to live off of their 401k, which they haven't necessarily been saving into, working for jobs which haven't necessarily offered them that retirement, suddenly trying to figure out how to live on the $25,000 a year that Social Security offers. I think we're looking at a retirement crisis that we've never dealt with. And I think larger part of the population is going to be older, experiencing that all at the same time.
Well, if you need to live on $25,000, let me tell you about a great place called Alabama, where $25 will go a long way in certain parts. Now, you might not like who you're living with, but your dollar will go a lot further.
I do, in seriousness, I do think that we are going to have to, not that we want to, because I think there's a large portion of the population that doesn't want to, but I think it is a must solve the economic inequality. And I forget the name of the index that measures inequality, but the GC index, I think. But we're going to have to fix that, because a vast majority of the country isn't going to be able to survive off of what is left.
I will go ahead and say the obvious thing here, which is probably the climate. In addition to all of that other stuff, I think we're gonna finally, because I don't see. I mean, we can't even muster the political will to tell everyone to wear a mask. I don't see how we're gonna muster the political will to, get this under control, unless we start voting a lot differently and voting in elections that are a lot freer than the ones that we have right now. So I definitely think in 10 years we're going to first start to see the first real crises that are generated by the climate and what that's going to do to us and how that's going to move people around. I definitely think within the next 10 years there's going to be a mass relocation of everyone for a whole lot of different reasons. People looking for their dollar to go a lot further. People who just want to get away from the city. I think that the COVID experience has probably soured some people on living in dense urban areas, and they're probably going to want to move out to North Dakota or wherever. That's about as far away as you can get. So that one's kind of obvious, but that one, I feel like that's coming along with everything else. Well, this has been a really great panel today, and I want to invite both of you to come back again if that interests you. We appreciate your time very much, and we love the work that both of you do. I mean, you both contribute so much to our civic life here in Atlanta. You're both indispensable parts of our civic life in Atlanta, and we just appreciate everything that you do for us, and we hope you keep doing it. We hope you take breaks when you need to take breaks. And if you ever need to call somebody, call me. I'll be happy to listen to you.
I'd rather talk to JP.
Well, JP will talk your ears off. He'll talk the horns off a billy goat. This is Dan Wisenhunt, editor and publisher of Decaturish.com. If you are joining us, we are going to be wrapping up our Twitch show here shortly. If you would like to tune in to our next show, we tape every Wednesday and Friday at 6 p.m. Next Wednesday, we are going to have the candidates for District 6 in DeKalb County, and that is going to be a good one. So you might want to go ahead and create your Twitch account now so you can give us a follow and be notified when that show comes on, so you can slide into the chat there and ask some questions of our local candidates. So we look forward to seeing you this Wednesday, where it'll be a debate for District 6. I want to thank again our guests Rose Scott, Bill Torpy, and Hans Utz. I hope you've enjoyed watching this, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We're going to see y'all on Wednesday. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. See y'all.
All right.